5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Getting back to some of the comments that retired Navy Admiral Kevin Donegan made on This Week yesterday. Kevin Donegan commanded the Navy's Fifth Fleet in the Middle East during President Trump's first term, so he knows the landscape well. And with respect to the Strait of Hormuz and some of the erroneous reporting, as we were talking about last hour, that Iran attempting to stop maritime traffic through the strait was not something that was anticipated by the Trump administration. Admiral Donegan said this.
I would say that if you look at the campaign CENTCOM initiated, this was built into it from the beginning. And when you think about it in terms of the things that the chairman said and the things that Admiral Cooper said his mission was, one of the things in there was to go after the Navy. And what they really meant was Iran's capability to control the straits when this is over. Because we don't want them to have power projection capability. We also don't want them to have this leverage over this internet, such an important chokehold. So this effort that's being done and being waged by CENTCOM is specifically to get at their cruise missile threat, their ability to launch drones at boats, put mines in the water, all those things that when this is over, you want them not to have, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it does make sense. And he made the point that because of the campaign to this point, we're at a much stronger starting point than we would have been otherwise had we allowed the Iranians to do what they have been doing in the Strait previously, which is to be disruptive. We're eliminating their capacity. Now, it's not nil, and the Strait is not effectively reopened yet, but Admiral Donegan also went on to talk about the rehearsals that they have done for just such an eventuality. The practice they've done escorting ships through the Strait for just such a time as this. And of course, Trump is trying to scramble America's allies to aid the effort to escort ships through and get maritime traffic resumed.
In the end, though, it's not going to be easy to escort convoys, but we practice it. And we don't practice it alone. Every year we do an exercise with 30 plus other nations in that same region. The last one is in February, just to rehearse, not just with ourselves, but with international partners on how we would do escorting and how we would keep Strait open if Iran actually, followed through on trying to either control it or close it.
Well, and the other, of course, development over the weekend, one of the other developments was the strikes on Karg Island, which is at the center of Iran's economic and strategic power. It serves as the primary hub for about 90% of the country's crude oil exports. So it's a key funding source for the IRGC and its regional proxy network. And the fact that Trump directed the military to take out the military targets on the island, but not the crude oil infrastructure, is telling, like to preserve that infrastructure, if possible, with an eye towards the rebuild. But if not, the threat is unmistakable that we could cut off your funding source altogether and really further cripple the regime. Despite all of this factual information and what you're hearing from military brass who knows, you still have this sort of performative populism being practiced by the left. A good example of this was Ro Khanna, the moderate in the same sense that Abigail Spanberger is moderate, congresswoman from California.
There was no imminent threat. Now there's a threat to the United States. We've created a threat. There were no ICBMs that Iran could launch here.
I believe they said they had the material to make 11 bombs.
But they couldn't reach the American homeland. I mean, everyone acknowledges they don't have ICBMs. Now we've put our troops at risk. 13 Americans are dead. And I hope we can end this war. I just want the president to declare victory, end the war. I don't want more Americans dying. I don't want $2 billion a day going into the Middle East. We were dragged into this war in a way that isn't helping the American people. People, you know what they talk about in my district around the country? How are my kids going to get jobs? How am I going to focus on getting health care? How can I afford child care? Why are grocery prices too high? That's what people are concerned about. They don't want us spending $2 billion a day fighting a war in the Middle East and putting our troops at risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a real compelling coming from someone like Ro Khanna, who was a dutiful flack for the Biden administration for 4 years. For more on all this, Stephen Bucci joins us. Served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Dan. Thank you for having me back on the show.
So what's your assessment of the week that was, this past week since we last spoke with you, including those strikes on Karg Island and the real focus now on getting the Strait of Hormuz reopened?
I think, we're seeing after now 2 weeks through this campaign that they're moving through their target list. I think the admiral that you played the clip for was 100% right. The people that are saying this wasn't planned for, they didn't think about this. Well, they didn't tell them about it, no. But the admiral spoke very clearly that that's ludicrous to think that wasn't done. And if you know what you're looking at, it's pretty obvious that they did plan for it. It's not a switch that you just turn on and off. You go out there, and the enemy does get a vote. So I think this week, I feel badly for the people that lost their lives. That's always a tragedy. I wish we hadn't had the tankers that were damaged and the one that crashed and lost the crew. Those are very precious assets. We don't have a ton of them, and they're very, very critical, particularly to a campaign like this one. But that is not an insurmountable problem. And, we continue to remove the launchers. We have moved through the the defense industrial base, the building of the missiles, the continuing strikes on nuclear-related facilities, and now they've kind of announced, well, it looks like it may be another 3 weeks. All right. The president said this is going to take around 4 weeks, maybe 5, and now we're hitting at that 5-week projection again. Let's let this continue to roll. I mean, come on. This guy, does he belong to the radical libertarian party, or does he just go for anything that is against President Trump? He is not a serious commentator on military operations and their efficacy. He didn't know what the heck he's talking about. So it is performative art, and it's ridiculous. The Strait of Hormuz, explain what the problem is. I mean, is it, we've taken them out, a lot of the mine placing boats, and we've taken out a lot of the drone capacity and the ballistic missiles, but a lot is not all. And so Iran still is able to destabilize that area enough such that it's impeding traffic flowing through. Mm-hmm. Is that? But how are they doing that? Well, they're doing it because they do still have some of those capacities. We don't. They have these so-called robot skiffs. They're small boats. They're disguised as like fishing boats, we don't want to go shooting fishermen, but we're going to be taking those boats out because they have explosives on them. They're like, a suicide drone on the water. They do have other drones, the aerial drones that are still out there. They do still have some capacity to fire at ships, particularly when they're going slow through that very narrow spot at the Straits of Hormuz. So, as you said, the capacity is way down for them to retaliate, to shoot back, but it's not zero yet. We're working on that, and I think we're going to get to that point. And the idea of escorting ships through that's sporty. It's a pretty narrow piece of water, and even our smaller naval vessels, the frigates, the destroyers, those kind of things, are pretty big and take up a lot of space and make it dangerous for those ships to be there. I think once we get some more of their capacity out of it, I would say probably by the end of this week, we'll probably be looking at escorts being a viable method to protect the ships, and hopefully the insurance industry will get enough confidence to start sending people through again. But again, this is not, for those of us old enough, this is not the OPEC oil embargo where we're going to go months and months with no, comfortable source and comfortably priced sources for fuel. This is a very, very transient moment that we're working on, and I think we're moving in the positive direction. We're going to get there. And again, people who claim, well, you can't do anything militarily unless you have zero casualties, zero negative effects after, the first 5 minutes. I guess we could do that if we dropped nukes all over everybody, but that's not really a good option you want people to go to. And I'm sorry, just saying we should never do anything unless it's Joe Biden or Barack Obama, then they could do it, but no, not Trump. Oh, gosh, no. So progress is being made, Dan. I think we're going to get there.
The dispatching of a amphibious ready group and attached Marine Expeditionary Unit that consists of several warships and upwards of 5,000 Marines to the Middle East. That escalation in presence, should that concern us at all? That this is expanding?
No, I just think they're trying to bring in additional options because the ARG, the Amphibious Readiness Group, which is multiple ships, do have Marines on it and all of their ground and air capabilities, but it does bring aircraft. It does bring a lot of other. Two of the ships are missile firing vessels, so it does bring a lot of extra capacity and gives the president options, but also puts pressure on the Iranians who are like, what are they going to do? Are they going to land and take over Karg Island? And now we have nothing? Us taking control of Karg Island would be a better idea than us destroying Karg Island as far as the oil infrastructure. But all of that is part of the negotiating process. More and more pressure to get these folks to say, okay, we're not going to win. Let's cut our losses and get out of here with our Swiss bank accounts and be done with it. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It is not a signal that we're going to do a ground offensive into Iran proper. A Marine expeditionary unit is not enough people to do that. They could take Karg Island, but they're not going to invade the mainland of Iran.
Trump was having a phone conversation with Brian Kilmeade at Fox, and when asked about the end here, what does the end look like, and what will it require, Trump said this:
I'm doing something about it, and I had to take an excursion. We had the greatest economy in history. We still do. Oh, this will bounce right back. when it's over, and I don't think it's going to be long, when it's over, this is going to bounce right back so fast.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
Will you ask anybody in particular? Would that be some of these a joint decision?
Well, I deal with people. I have great people.
Yeah.
It'll be over when I feel it in my bones.
Well, that's President Trump's style showing out there more than anything else. Look, he's got advisors. He's got the subject matter experts as far as our capabilities and how they can be applied, and he has the experts on the intelligence side. And what we don't have in intelligence, the Israelis do, as far as human intelligence inside Iran. And that's what we want. You know, the idea of doing this on a timeline as opposed to doing it on the conditions on the ground is crazy. You want to give people a ballpark number because we like to know. But that's not that relevant. The relevant is what's happening on the ground, are the effects what we need to happen to accomplish our goal, and the president will weigh all that advice, and then make a decision. It's not like he's sitting around with his feet up, drinking pina coladas, he doesn't drink at all, but you're sitting around and just waiting, I think we'll be done today. This is something based on analysis of data and the conditions on the ground. That's what you want the president to do.
And with respect to opening up the strait and getting support to do that, President Trump posting on Truth Social about that, trying to enlist allies to provide material support to the effort to open up the strait. But something that Kim Strassel wrote about in the Wall Street Journal is relevant to this discussion. You were sort of alluding to it. She writes, we're no longer hostage to Middle East fossil fuel threats, thanks to Trump's energy independence policies that started in his first term, which gives us room to weather temporary Hormuz disruptions. Domestic gasoline prices have spiked, but are still notably below their highs during Biden's term. Thanks to growing U.S. exports, our allies are better positioned against fallout, and Gulf actors are working alongside the U.S. to mitigate Iran's blockade. Some of us remember the OPEC embargo days that you were referencing, and she writes, no more. So the point is we're much better positioned because we're much closer to energy independence. We're an energy exporter. And so we can provide that support to allies as well. And in addition, our allies have as much incentive to see the strait opened as we do. So that should encourage their participation.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Europe gets way more of its oil from this area than we do. China gets a ton of it from there. The other day, the Chinese even put out a statement saying that, they regretted Iran's attacking other Gulf states because they realized Iran may be their buddy, but they do business with a lot of those countries, and they can't afford to pick a side 100% that puts them at odds with their other suppliers. So, there's a lot of dynamics going on here. Most of the positive ones having been created by Trump's policies. You may not like what he did here, particularly, if you're a Ben Rhodes kind of Democrat, where you still think your original plan of giving a bunch of money to the Iranians and making them our friend and our primary partner in the Middle East was a good idea. I think anybody that's sentient now is starting to realize the whole Obama nuke plan with Iran was a disaster and was the disaster that then candidate Trump and eventually President Trump called it out as. And we just got to keep working with these much improved conditions, and I think we'll come out the other side. And I agree with President Trump. I think this will get turned around very quickly once we get rid of these guys and the Iranian people are suddenly running their own country again.
So what does this do, speaking of China, what does this do to the hand that Trump will play when he sits down with Xi at the end of this month?
I think it's greatly improved. Xi is going to probably stomp his feet and puff his chest up a little bit, and President Trump's going to look at him and say, look, we understand if the oil stops to you, your economy stops. So stop huffing and puffing. Let's figure out how to do this together and work as less as adversaries and more as partners. And keep in mind that can change at any moment. So let's play nicely. I think that message will come through. I don't think Xi is, as nutty as Putin is. And I don't mean Putin's certifiable or anything, but his judgment, I believe, is flawed. Xi is more practical, but he's also, I think, more dangerous.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. Now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking to you next week.
Yes, sir. And Stephen Bucci joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a